When you had that third failure in a row, did you think, I need to pack this in?
Never.
Why not?
I don't ever give up. I mean, I'd have to be dead or completely incapacitated.
What is it that you have that so many people who are unbelievably brilliant at engineering or are incredibly good managers or bold business people or what have you, what is it that you have, do you think, that enables you to make this stuff happen?
Well, first of all, I certainly don't think I can, do anything or do most things that people think are impossible. Because I think a lot of what people think is impossible is actually impossible. But occasionally it's not. I guess it's. I don't think I've said this before. I think it's helpful to have kind of a physics framework for looking at things. Do a first principles analysis, look for negative feedback, and like really believe in what you're doing, but not just from a blind faith standpoint. Like to have really thought about it and say, okay, this is true. I'm convinced it's true, and I've tried every angle to figure out if it's untrue, and sort negative feedback to figure out maybe if I'm maybe wrong. But then after all that, it still seems like this is the right way to go. Then that I think gives one a fundamental conviction and an ability to convey that conviction to others, and to convince them to join. And that's what a company is. It's a group of people who come together to create a product of some kind. And so if you can convey that and answer the concerns that people have, convince them that this is something that needs to be done, it's important, and here is a path to do it, even if that path has a lot of danger associated with it and risk, and maybe it won't succeed. But people can understand, okay, this is why it's important, and even if the odds are that it won't succeed, it's worth trying to do it. Then I think you can create a great company. Well, I think it's important to have a very, to apply critical thinking to, this may sound trite, but to apply critical thinking to what one is doing. By that I mean just the fundamentals of logic, do you have the right axioms? Are they relevant? And are you making the right conclusions based on those axioms? That's the essence of critical thinking, and yet it is amazing how often people fail to do that. I think wishful thinking is innate in the human brain. You want things to be the way you wish them to be, and so you tend to filter information that you shouldn't filter. That's the most common flaw that I see. It's very difficult to start companies and quite painful. I think that's important to bear in mind. I don't know if that's probably not encouraging. Let me put it this way: if you need inspiring words, don't do it.
Same question. What did you think? This is something that GM and Toyota and these massive multi-billion-dollar organizations have been trying. What gave you the confidence to kind of pursue it? And now that it seems to be a huge success, where do you think this industry is going to be in the next 5-10 years?
So with Tesla, the goal is to try to accelerate the advent of sustainable transport. I think it would happen anyway, just out of necessity. Yeah. But because we have an unpriced externality in the cost of gasoline, we weren't pricing in the environmental effects of CO2 in the oceans and atmosphere. That's causing the normal market forces to not function properly. And so the goal of Tesla is to try to act as a catalyst to accelerate those sort of normal forces, the normal sort of market reaction that would occur. We're trying to have a catalytic effect on that. Yeah. And try to make it happen, I don't know, maybe 10 years sooner than it would otherwise occur. Yeah. That's the goal of Tesla. So,
question, can there be an Elon Musk in China? And the answer was no. And it was because of, and this is according to Kai-Fu Lee, former head of Google China, who started Microsoft Research, in Beijing, and he said it's because of the education system in China. It emphasizes too much rote learning. You are Elon Musk. What do you make of that? I mean, do you agree with that?
Well, I actually, I mean, obviously, are a number of very successful entrepreneurs in China.
Yeah, Jack Ma, Pony Ma, that's right.
Yeah, exactly. So I think I'm not sure I would entirely agree with that. But it is generally true that you know, innovation comes from questioning the way things have been done before.
Yeah.
And if in the education system you're taught not to do that, that will inhibit entrepreneurship.
Being able to question what you're being taught, being able to.
Yeah. I mean, just you know, saying, well, is there a better way?
Yeah.
You know, to ask that question.
Yeah.
Like, there's a friend of mine who's got a great saying about creating a company, which is trying to build a company and have it succeed is like eating glass and staring into the abyss. So, I mean, what tends to happen is it's sort of quite exciting for the first several months of starting a company, and then reality sets in. Things don't go as well as planned. Customers aren't signing up. The technology or the product isn't working as well as you thought. And then that can sometimes be compounded by a recession, and it can be very, very painful for several years. So I think, frankly, starting a company, I would advise people to have a high pain tolerance.
Do you fear that maybe in this generation or the younger generation that they don't have that perseverance and grit to take on these really tough challenges?
I think some people do.
Yeah.
But no, I think it is definitely true that, I mean, maybe there are occasionally companies that get created where there's not an extended period of extreme pain. But I'm not aware of, you know, very many of such instances. So, but I do think that you know, new great entrepreneurs are born every day, and we'll continue to see amazing companies get built. Yeah, but I would definitely advise people who are starting a company to expect a long period of quite high difficulty. But I mean, as long as people stay super focused on creating the absolute best product or service that really delights their end customer, if they stay focused on that, then if you get it such that your customers want you to succeed, then you probably will.
All right. What are the other ideas that you have that you would love to see another entrepreneur just take on and go?
Well, I think there's a lot of opportunity in general in electrification of transport. So electric aircraft, I think there's a lot of opportunity there. I think in genetics, although that's sort of a thorny area, but I think that's in terms of solving some of the more intransigent diseases, genetics are really key to solving those. Something that I think people maybe only beginning to look at is establishing some kind of brain-computer interface. So
a brain-computer interface.
Yeah, at the neuron level. So this is sort of intelligence augmentation as opposed to artificial intelligence.
Right.
And I think that has a lot of potential.
If you were 22 today, what would the 5 problems that you would think about working on be?
Well, first of all, I think if somebody is doing something that is useful to the rest of society, I think that's a good thing. Like, it doesn't have to change the world. Like, you know, if you're doing something that has high value to people, and frankly, even if it's like just a little game or, you know, some improvement in photo sharing or something, if it has a small amount of good for a large number of people, I think that's fine. Like, stuff doesn't need to be changed the world just to be good. But you know, in terms of things that I think are most likely to affect the future of humanity, I think AI is probably the single biggest item in the near term that's likely to affect humanity. So it's very important that we have the advent of AI in a good way. That is something that if you could look into the crystal ball and see the future, you would like that outcome, because it is something that could go wrong, as we've talked about many times, and so we really need to make sure it goes right. That's I think AI, working on AI and making sure it's a great future. That's the most important thing I think right now, the most pressing item. Then obviously anything to do with genetics. If you can actually solve genetic diseases, if you can prevent dementia or Alzheimer's or something like that, with genetic reprogramming, that would be wonderful. So I think this genetics, it might be the sort of second most important item. I think having a high bandwidth interface to the brain, like we're currently bandwidth limited. We have a digital tertiary self in the form of our email capabilities, like computers, phones, applications. We're effectively superhuman, but we're extremely bandwidth constrained in that interface between the cortex and your sort of that tertiary digital form of yourself, and helping solve that bandwidth constraint would be, I think, very important for the future as well.
Where does that come from, or how do you think about making a decision when everyone tells you this is a crazy idea? Or where do you get the internal strength to do that?
Well, first of all, I'd say I actually think I feel fear quite strongly. So it's not as though I just have the absence of fear. I feel it quite strongly. But there are just times when something is important enough, you believe in it enough, that you do it in spite of the fear.
So speaking of important things,
like, people shouldn't think people shouldn't think, well, I feel fear about this and therefore I shouldn't do it. It's normal to feel fear. Like, there have to be something mentally wrong if you didn't feel fear. But other than that, it's really SpaceX and Tesla.
And what do you do when you're at SpaceX or Tesla? Like, what does your time look like there?
Yeah, so that's a good question. I think a lot of people think I must spend a lot of time with media or on businessy things, but actually almost all my time, like 80% of it, is spent on engineering and design. So it's developing next generation product. That's 80% of it.